stocks on Wall Street and mixed. The Dow adds 400 points, S&P 500 closes flat to start new quarter as investors rotate out of tech. Tech-heavy Nasdaq falls over 160 points at close. Futures tick higher after Trump's tax cut bill clears the Senate and investors eye potential trade deals ahead of July 9th deadline. And Asian markets open mixed, mirroring Wall Street moves as investors digest the latest comments from U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, who said that interest rates would have been cut if it weren't for tariffs. GIFT Nifty is indicating a positive start for the Indian market. Crude oil prices edge higher as investors take stock of positive demand indicators. All eyes on upcoming OPEC Plus meeting, which will announce an output hike for August. Gold prices also rise on safe haven demand after U.S. President Donald Trump's Big Beautiful Bill gets passed in the Senate. India's top trade negotiator extends his stay in Washington as talks enter the final phase to seal an interim deal. Sources say stalemate continues over the agri and dairy sector. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says a deal with India is very close. The biggest IPO of 2025 so far, HDB Financial Services, is set to make its stock market debut today. The rupees 12,500 crore issue closed for subscription last week, and it received healthy response from institutional investors and the high net worth individuals. Hello, good morning. You've tuned into CNBC TV 18. You're watching Power Breakfast with me, Vinny Motiwala. How have the Asian markets opened up this morning? A mixed opening is what we are watching out for. While the Taiwan index is seeing a decline of around 0.3%, we're seeing the Hang Seng that's opened up in trade today with a gain of 0.5%. We're seeing Nikkei that's down in trade today. That's down almost 0.9%. So pressure coming in on Nikkei. We have Shanghai that's muted in today's trading session. Slight bit of a negative bias there. So mixed opening is what we're watching out for, given that Hang Seng as well as ASX 200, I beg your pardon, that's managing to hold on to gains in today's trading session. Now, Nifty implied open is indicating a slight bit of a positive start for the Indian market. As of now, a 28-point uptick is what we are watching out for from the Indian markets. But what is the handover that we saw from the US market? That is also important because Wall Street also closed mixed in yesterday's trading session. Dow that ended with gains of almost 400 points. But on the flip side, you had S&P 500 that was down 7 points. Nasdaq that fell almost 167 points as well. What more happened on the Wall Street? We have Pipa Stevens joining in with us for that wrap. Pipa.
U.S. markets were mixed Tuesday after the Senate passed President Trump's tax and spending bill and new comments from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell on the path ahead for interest rate hikes. The Dow up 400 points, the S&P inching down 7 points, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq shedding 167 points. Shares of Tesla fell nearly 5% on Tuesday after President Trump suggested that the Department of Government Efficiency should look at subsidies for Elon Musk's companies for potential cost-cutting measures. That post on Truth Social came after Musk, who used to lead the DOGE department, criticized the president's tax and spending bill. The bill narrowly passed the Senate on Tuesday after Vice President J.D. Vance cast the tie-breaking vote. The bill will now go back to the House before President Trump can sign it. And new data today from the Labor Department shows U.S. job openings rose unexpectedly in May. The rise suggests the labor market remains resilient in the face of high interest rates and economic instability fueled in part by the president's trade war. Employers posted nearly 8 million vacancies for the month, with hotels, restaurants, and finance companies leading the way. Openings at the federal government fell to their lowest level since May 2020 amid the president's hiring freeze. That's what's happening here in the U.S. Back to you in Mumbai.
Thank you so much for that. But let's see what experts have to say about the market sentiment and the impact of the Big Beautiful Bill being cleared by the Senate.
The one big beautiful bill first as not necessarily good for stocks, good for bonds, but short term versus long term. I think short term, the fact that it has gone through the hoops it has with Congress and pretty much kept to the timeline that it had stated originally, that does mitigate some of the risk from the markets and some of the uncertainty. I'd say over the short term, it's likely a positive when we think about the equity markets because you're going to see that big boost to growth coming into next year. But thereafter, we're left with the hangover of the deficit and that ever-expanding deficit. If you think about the estimates that have been thrown out over the course of this bill, it's 1 trillion, 2 trillion, 3 trillion, 4 trillion. It's like these numbers don't even mean anything. So it's going to be a meaningful impact and probably create somewhat of a floor on yields over the course of time.
So that's all the global market action that we have for you all this morning. How is all this going to be impacting our Indian markets? We have a team of research joining in with us as always to set you up for trade, tell you which are the important stocks to watch out for in the trading session as well. First up, we have Hormaz joining in with us to get us the market cues that we should be keeping an eye out on. Obviously, a lot that are going to be happening in the world of IPO and new listings coming up. But market cues, what's the indication there, Hormaz?
Morning, Vinny. It's been a couple of days of consolidation, right, for the markets after the last week of a rally that we saw on the indices. The only difference being that the range is getting narrower. We traded in a 190-point range on Monday. That range came down to just 90 points in yesterday's trading session. We just managed to end in the green after recovering from the lows, and part of that is of course attributed to the Nifty Bank because that emerged as the outperformer, recovering almost 300 points from the lows of the day, and that recovery in the Nifty Bank happened courtesy of the outperformance that continues in the PSU Bank Index, which was up for the 6th straight day yesterday. Has almost added almost close to 80,000 crore rupees in market cap over this 6-day up move in the PSU Bank Index. Now, even the broader markets saw a bit of a recovery in the second half of the trading session. We saw some profit booking initially, but the mid-cap index recovered almost 300 points from the lows. The small-cap index recovered from the lows as well, so that turns out to be a positive. Now, although they've made a lower high on the charts, the bulls will be happy for the fact that they still managed to hold on to 25,500 on the Nifty. Of course, as you mentioned, the big day today for HDB Financial, the biggest IPO of the year so far, will be listing today. It was a healthy response to the IPO led mainly by institutional investors, so we'll keep an eye out on that, and as a result of which we keep an eye out on its NBFC peers as well as to how they react to this valuation differential. Of course, Monday's high remains the key, 25,662. That's the first barrier to cross for the Nifty and for the Nifty Bank as well. The Monday's high, which is a record high level of 57,614, will be the key level to watch out for. Business updates continue. All eyes will now be on these big banks and the big FMCG companies as to what they report in their provisional updates for the quarter. For now, the GIFT Nifty is indicating a slightly subdued start. We see how the day unfolds.
Absolutely. We'll keep an eye out on how the day unfolds. As of now, it's up 22 points. But let's move on and go across to Upasna, who's here to tell us which are the important stocks to watch out for in today's trading session. Good morning, Upasna.
Good morning, Winnie. First up, a lot of stocks in focus on the back of the monthly sales for the month of June in terms of auto sales. First up, let me start with Hero MotoCorp. The company has seen an uptick of 10% in terms of its auto sales at 5.54 lakh units on a Y-on-Y basis. Hyundai also in focus as company's total monthly sales stood at 60,924 units and company's SUV's contribution stood at 67.6% of the total domestic sales in June 2025. Maruti Suzuki also reported its numbers for the month of June, and the total sales was down nearly about 6.3%, largely in line with the CNBC poll on a Y-on-Y basis. Now let us look at the Q1 updates. Key stocks in focus. First up is the V-Mart Retail. The company's total revenue from operations saw an uptick of 12.6% on a Y-on-Y basis, and same-store sales growth stood at just about 1%. South Indian Bank also reported its provisional numbers. It is a weak start for the year for the bank in terms of loans, and deposits saw an uptick of 9% on a Y-on-Y basis and sequentially saw growth of about 5%. MOIL is the next one on our radar. The price of all chemical grades have been increased by the company by nearly about 2% with effect from July 1. Lupin also in focus as US FDA has approved companies ANDA of loteprenol etabonate ophthalmic gel. Hence, this stock also will be in focus. RITES also will be in focus as the JV company has received LOA from Southwestern Railway for nearly about 37.8 crores. So all in all these stocks will be on our radar today.
Okay, Upasana, thank you so much for that. But finally, Mangalam is here to tell us what's going to be happening in the world of F&O. Mangalam, like Hormuz was also mentioning, last couple of days of a bit of consolidation. So what should we watch out for now in the world of F&O?
Well, the market's biding time right now, ahead of any major triggers. So that's exactly what's taking place yesterday as well and the previous trading session. The good part yesterday was there was recovery from lows that we saw towards the latter half of trade. The Nifty bank was the one that led that recovery. And the mid-cap index absolutely flattish. And that was reflected in the advanced decline as well. Almost an equal number of stocks advanced and declined. So that ratio was split right down the middle. Those lines intersected towards the end. 2,000 crore worth selling by FIs in the cash market. Nothing really to worry about. The DIs went ahead and bought close to 771 crores. Importantly, the FIs also did not do much in index futures. A mild sell of close to around 116 crores, of which there was almost an equal amount of long and short additions. So their exposure, which was at 38% yesterday, stands at 37% today on the long side. And because it is consolidation that the street is playing for, and tomorrow is the weekly options expiry, the options that are active are also suggesting some sort of range-bound move. 25,500 put. That added close to around 35 lakh shares in premium. 60 rupees telling you around 25,450 is an important support. And on the way up, we have 25,650, 25,700, which is very close to the last couple of days' highs, where there is some supply, which is likely because that's where the 25,600 calls are extremely active. On the way down, we'll watch out for yesterday's low on the Nifty bank as well as the Nifty. That suggests that there was some support from, even in consolidation levels, we saw some recovery from there. And in terms of stocks, IDFC First was fairly well bid yesterday, a lot of long positions added. And I'm watching out for a couple of these consumer durable names too. We saw a lot of long positions being added on names like Amber as well as Blue Star. So do watch out for that.
Okay, absolutely, Mangalam. We'll keep an eye out on these names as well. Thank you so much for that. But on that note, we're going to sip into a very short break. Don't go anywhere. We'll come back with more news and updates after the break. Welcome back to Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Now let's move on. The Union Cabinet has cleared an employment-linked incentive scheme with an outlay of over 1 lakh crore rupees. The Cabinet has also greenlit a new research and development fund worth around 1 lakh crore rupees. Both these are budget announcements made by the Finance Minister earlier this year. Abhimanyu Sharma is joining in with us to give us more details on this front. Abhimanyu.
Two schemes aimed at employment and research respectively have been approved by the Union Cabinet. The first is the employment-linked incentive scheme with an outlay of nearly rupees 1 lakh crores, which has been approved by the Cabinet, which is going to provide nearly a month's wage to first-timers in 2 installments. The provision allows for payment up to 1 month's wage and it's going to apply to all sectors. The incentives will be proportional to wages for 2 years up to rupees 3,000 per month per employee, and this will only apply to first-timers. Also, the payments will take place in 2 installments after 6 months and 12 months respectively, and the incentives will particularly continue for the 3rd and the 4th year for the manufacturing sector to provide a spur to India's manufacturing sector. The second scheme, which has been approved, also has an outlay of nearly rupees 1 lakh crores, and it is named the Research, Development and Innovation Scheme, which is going to provide risk capital to sunrise and strategic sectors and is going to encourage private sector to scale up their overall investment in sunrise domains. Also, the government is going to provide funds at 50-year interest-free loans to ANRF special purpose funds, from where it is going to get deployed towards several SPVs and AIFs. It remains to be seen how early the implementation of these schemes is going to begin and what are the opportunities as well as challenges which are going to arise from the same.
Thank you so much for that, Abhimanyu. But moving on, and it's been 8 years since goods and service tax took effect, unifying 17 taxes and 13 cesses. Tax collections have doubled in the last 5 years from just over 11 lakh crore rupees in FY21. Total mop-up now stands at more than 22 lakh crore rupees for FY25. The collections in June stand at 1.84 lakh crore rupees. The overall tax base has nearly tripled. In 2017, there were 16 lakh establishments and individuals registered as taxpayers, and as of 2025, we have more than 1.5 crore registered taxpayers. Experts call for simplification of 5 slab structures and widening the tax gambit.
The challenges, I'm sure the states are struggling with it. One of the challenges that most of the states would be saying is they want revenue neutrality. So, which is not difficult for the officers to work out a revenue neutrality. But the challenge happens is that whether you want to have the rates as 5 and 18, so the gap between the two rates would be too huge, and there'll be a lot of pressure on the government and the political executive to bring items to 5.
Yes, I would think that is going to be a major priority. And I also believe that is going to be the biggest challenge, simply because while everybody agrees that some sort of collapsing of rates is essential and necessary, it is going to be very difficult. However, what are we going to do? We are going to merge 5 and 12, or would you like to merge 12 and 18? What this would mean in either case is that some commodities rates will go up, some commodities rates will come down. Please remember the rates, like you're fully aware, was a combination of equity and concerns for revenue.
Okay, those were some of the bites coming in on GST and how it's moved. But on that note, we're going to slip into a very short break. After the break, we'll get you the cues in the world of commodities, so stay tuned in. Welcome back to Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Now, getting you the latest on Trump-related developments, we have Dia joining with us in our special segment, Trump Watch. Dia, over to you.
US President Donald Trump and Elon Musk reignite their bitter feud. Speaking to reporters on Tuesday, President Trump threatened to deport Musk and strip his businesses of funding following Musk's public criticism of the president's flagship spending bill. When asked directly if he would consider deporting Elon Musk, who has held US citizenship since 2002, Trump said, and I quote, "We'll have to take a look." Later that night, he also posted on Truth Social that the Department of Government Efficiency may need to take a good hard look at his companies. Let's listen in.
I think what's going to happen is Doge is going to look at Musk. And if Doge looks at Musk, we're going to save a fortune. Thank you very much, everybody. I don't think you should be playing that game with me.
President Trump's $3.3 trillion tax and spending cut bill passed the Senate Tuesday following a dramatic 51-50 vote. 3 Republican senators, Susan Collins, Thom Tillis and Rand Paul, broke ranks and voted against it. In the end, Vice President J.D. Vance cast the tie-breaking vote. The bill includes $4.5 trillion in tax cuts and $1.2 trillion in spending reductions, and it now moves to the House. Now, on the tariff front, President Donald Trump says the U.S. could reach a potential deal with India, casting a doubt on a possible deal with Japan as well.
I think we're going to have a deal with India, possibly. And that's going to be a different kind of a deal. It's going to be a deal where we're able to go in and compete. Right now, India doesn't accept anybody in. I think India is going to do that. And if they do that, we're going to have a deal for much less tariffs. We have a great relationship, great reliance, and really a great sort of a partnership in a way. But on trade, they've been very unfair. And those days are gone. So what I'm going to do is I'll write them a letter and say we thank you very much. And we know you can't do the kind of things that we need. And therefore, you'll pay a 30%, 35%, or whatever the number is that we determine, because we also have a very big trade deficit with Japan, as you know. And it's very unfair to the American people.
And amid growing political pressure, Fed Reserve Chair Jerome Powell issued a public reminder on Tuesday saying the U.S. Central Bank must remain completely non-political. His comments follow a series of attacks by Trump, who has repeatedly criticized Powell for not cutting interest rates sooner. Here's what he said.
You get attacked by the president a lot on a personal basis. Does it make your job harder?
I'm very focused on just doing my job. I mean, there are things that, the things that matter are using our tools to achieve the goals that Congress has given us: maximum employment, price stability, financial stability. And that's what we focus on, 100%.
And finally, ahead of PM Netanyahu's visit to the White House on July 7, President Trump says Israel agrees on terms for a 60-day ceasefire deal in Gaza and wants Hamas to accept it before conditions worsen.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Dia. But with that, let's move on to Manisha Gupta, who's joining you with us to tell us what's going to be happening in the world of commodities. Good morning, Manisha.
Morning, and thank you for that, Vinny. Well, I'll start with the crude oil prices because we're looking at strong investor demand, and that seems to be keeping the prices supportive at around $67, $68 a barrel for the Brent prices there. Also, remember, it's going to be the OPEC Plus meeting on 6th of July with an expectation that you could be looking at production going higher by 411,000 barrels per day, yet again for a fifth straight month. Having said that, the geopolitical tensions have eased as Iran, Israel are holding ceasefire. But there is absolutely, as you guys were discussing, uncertainty over July 9 deadline for tariff, and that continues to weigh onto the markets there. But I also want to talk about the metals as a sector because we are seeing some support continue here. The gold prices gained almost 1.5% overnight. The US dollar trading at around 4-year lows has been a supportive factor. Not just gold, silver is holding well above $36 an ounce. Copper prices holding around the 3-month highs as well. While there is some profit taking that we've seen happen in case of zinc and aluminum in the overnight market, it's a mixed bag for metals, but more on the higher side as we trade right now.
Okay, Manisha, thank you so much for that. Charlie will be keeping an eye out on copper as well in today's trade and how that is going to be moving going forward as well. But with that, we are absolutely out of time on this edition of Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Thank you so much for tuning in. Up next, your Bazaar Morning Call.